What's going on, everybody? Adam Alexander back with Be the Best You. And of course, we already know that means be the best me as well. So this will serve as part 2 of my introduction. And I kind of wanted to delve a little bit deeper into the life that I was telling you about and what makes me who I am and the experiences that have given me the direction to take the different paths at different times. So in part 1, you can find it here if you haven't already watched it. I told you that my parents, my biological mother and father, split up when I was about 1.5 and then divorced shortly thereafter. So from a young age, my mother tried to raise me in the Christian church, in the Christian faith. Whereas my father didn't find that of any importance. So he didn't practice any type of faith or even any certain beliefs. And he essentially believed in all the opposing ideals that my mother believed in. And I'm sure that's one reason why it just didn't work out. But all the things that she tried to teach me, he would undo because he didn't think that they were a problem. And I would have to see him every weekend. And I'm glad I did. I made the choice when I got older. I think I was about 14 when I made the choice, or 13, to stop seeing him every weekend. And I'll get into why. But from an early age, I had to go to his house every weekend. And I would see him and the rest of his family, his sister and my cousins and even my grandfather while he was still alive. They're wonderful people, and they always welcomed me with open arms, always made me feel loved, and always made me feel part of the family. But my father and I, we had more of like a buddy relationship, and I don't believe in that. I believe that a parent is a parent, and you are there to parent. As you get further in life, and as you get older, and you're not a child anymore, and you're an adult, then you can become best friends, buddies with your parents. But when you have that friend relationship early on, as a parent, that parent who's really a friend is too afraid of hurting the friendship by making parental decisions. I've seen it far too often. And that was kind of like my dad was more like, he would, as I got older, he would set me up with girls. He would set me up with dates. He didn't drink because he stopped, because remember, my parents met in AA. My initials are AA. But the people that he surrounded himself with drank. And he allowed me to, I don't even know why or how he could do this, but he allowed me to take a sip of somebody's wine or take a sip of somebody's beer or drink his coffee. And he smoked heavy. He smoked 2 packs a day, every day. From the time he woke up to the time he went to bed, he was hacking a lung out. Which is one reason why I never wanted to smoke. I was like, oh, this is disgusting. My week was very different than my weekend. And the surroundings were completely opposite. During the week, at my mom's, versus the weekend at my dad's. Because remember, my dad lived in a trailer park. And as I mentioned previously, there were good streets that you could go down. And there were streets that you didn't go down, that you avoided for different reasons. Drugs, you'd get jumped, you'd get beaten, you'd get shot at. There were some things that happened in the woods behind the trailer park that everybody knew about, but nobody did anything about. And you didn't go into those woods. And of course, as I mentioned before, I went into the woods. It was a really rough place to be. I had some good friends there, so every weekend I would see these friends, and we had like a little support system. And they were good guys, good friends there. But there were some bad dudes in that trailer park, and we had a lot of issues. So some things that I've been through just on the weekends going out there, I've been shot at. I was way too close. I mean, he must have been a terrible aim. And as an adult and a gun advocate, I shoot quite frequently. And I don't know if he was just a terrible shot or what, but he shouldn't have missed. And he did. There were obvious drug deals that went down there all the time. And you always knew who was doing it. So you knew when certain people went certain places, you knew they were selling certain things. I was never tempted to do drugs because I'm too much of a control freak of my own free will. And I never want to be under control of something else, of a substance. But one day we went down the creek, or creek, whatever you want to call it, that led to the park. And my buddy, I think it was Eric that was with me. This dude was a good dude. We were walking down, and we went down to the park, and we saw these guys. And I turned around, and we were walking our bikes, because you couldn't ride your bike down this way. And we were walking our bikes, and I turned around, and Eric was already riding away. And the two dudes that were making a deal came running after me right away. And I was kind of like frozen like a deer in headlights, but I also didn't want to run. I didn't want to give that impression. So I just stood there. I don't even think I moved, really. I didn't back up. I didn't go forward. I just stood there. And within seconds, they were right there at me. One dude pulls out a pistol, puts it at my forehead, and then threatens me. And he said something like, if you F and tell anybody what the F you saw, and I just remember a lot of Fs, a lot of swear words. Next time I'm going to pull the trigger. And that was the first time I ever thought that I was going to lose my life. So there's a lot of guys that I've known over the years that have been through far worse than I have. All right, we're going to switch directions and go into something a little lighter. So we're going to talk about health. As I drink my windshield washer fluid, as everybody calls it. It's amino acids. I drink a gallon of water every day, and I just fill it with amino acid drink. All right, so health. There's other things, by the way. I've been in a ton of fights. I've been jumped a ton of times. I never started a single fight in my life. I can say that. I can honestly say that I have never started a single fight in my life. I just had to defend myself and others. All right, so I graduate high school, and I was already in a lot of bands. I was in the New Jersey hardcore scene, pretty heavy with a couple bands, and I wanted that to be my life. I wanted to be a rock star, a professional musician. And I studied classical guitar every day, taught myself classical guitar, and an old friend of mine from high school, Sean Kelly, came over because he had a nylon string guitar. I didn't even have one. And he let me borrow his guitar to audition for the guitar department at Westchester University, which was pretty elite. This was like an elite thing to get into. It was really cool if you got into the guitar department. I played all my pieces, and I played my original. My technique was probably horrendous, but somehow I got in, and I did a year there. My mother was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and remember, I didn't grow up going to church because every weekend I was at my dad's. So I missed church growing up. But in the Mormon church, you can elect to go on and serve a mission. I did a year of college first, and then I decided to serve a mission. Thought it was the right thing. So I decided to go on this mission. And I got sent to Littleton, Colorado in 1999. Does anybody remember what happened in Littleton, Colorado in 1999? That was the year of the Columbine massacre, the school shooting. I remember being in my dorm room during the shooting, watching the whole thing on TV with my friends that were there with me. Later that year, after I finished school in June or whatever, and then I get sent in, I think, October out to Littleton, Colorado. And it was an incredible experience. It was intense. I did come across and encounter a few families that lost their child in the shooting. And I came across a lot of families that whose children survived the shooting, of course. Actually, I think there was only one family that I encountered that lost a child in the shooting. I think only one. And everybody else, their kids had survived the shooting and went to that school. But I went to Littleton, Colorado to serve my mission. And I know for a fact that I was sent there for a reason. Because there were some people that I encountered that I needed them as much as they needed me. But within 3 months of being out in Colorado, I started getting really sick. We would go tracting, which is you walk around, the door-to-door thing, right? Everybody knows about that. Oh, here come the Mormons going door to door. I would pass out. We'd be walking. I'd start passing out. I passed out in the street one time, and my companion, the guy who I'm with, had to pull me over into the sidewalk or something like that. And it just so happened that a member of the church that we were tending there, a member was driving by in his Jeep, stopped, picked me up and him, and then took us to the hospital. And they started to put me through a lot to see what was wrong with me. Turns out, later on, we found out what it was. But while I was in the hospital, the doctors thought that I had spinal meningitis because around the same time, there was a spinal meningitis outbreak in New York. And they thought, oh, he's from New Jersey, he probably has spinal meningitis. So they gave me all these drugs, and they said, we're going to give you a spinal tap. And I was like, okay, I didn't know what that was. And so this new nurse, literally brand new male nurse or anesthesiologist, right? That's what they were. Comes in. I could see him shaking. Okay, let's just start there. I could see he was shaking, and he's like, okay, are you ready for this? I was like, yeah, sure, because nobody told me what a spinal tap was. He pulls out a freaking needle like this long, if I recall. He goes, okay, roll over onto your side and curl into the fetal position. I was like, what? He's like, this is going to hurt. Do you want something? I was like, I don't know. Nobody told me. And I remember my companion looked away. I look up at him, he looks away, and all of a sudden, smash! Oh my gosh! The worst pain in my freaking life at that point. This needle into my spine. And I remember my legs from my waist down were on fire. I was in so much freaking pain, it wasn't even funny. And my companion wouldn't even look over at me. And I'm feeling this thing moving around, and he takes it out. I said, are we done? The nurse goes, I'm having some trouble, or I'm having a problem or something. I said, what? He's like, I got to do it again. He does it again. Goes into my spine. I'm like, ow! I'm screaming. 3 more times. 3 more freaking needles in my spine. And he never actually got the fluid. Because, later on, now I find out he's supposed to be getting spinal fluid that they can test to see if I have spinal meningitis. He never got the fluid. So another nurse had to come in and give me 1 more. 4. Okay, so wait. 1, yeah, so he did 3. He did 3 total. And then she gave me the 4th spinal tap in my spine. And by then, I was just numb to it all. I was like, this is the worst freaking pain in my life. So she got the fluid, finally. So 4 spinal taps in 1 night. And I remember I couldn't walk for like a week. I didn't even have feeling in my legs. Well, it turns out I didn't have spinal meningitis. I had altitude sickness. Because I was from sea level my whole life, New Jersey, and I was in the Mile High City. I had altitude sickness. And then now all of a sudden I've got back issues because of 4 spinal taps in 1 night. Well, I couldn't walk for a week. I was still passing out because I still had the altitude sickness that they didn't even know, by the way. They didn't even know. They didn't find out I had altitude sickness or altitude disease or whatever it was until I got back to Jersey and they went through testing. Because I was still sick. So they sent me home. Hold on. So they sent me home from my mission. And if you know anything about the Mormon church, getting sent home from your mission is not like a good thing. It's not looked at as honorable. Like, oh, he did something wrong, so he got sent home. So that was really hard, spiritually, emotionally, obviously physically, I was still in a wreck. And I was mad because I'm out there doing the right thing, having a good attitude, making the right decisions, and I get sent home. And not only that, I'm in a world of pain. And I had already been lifting weights heavy for 2 years, right? Trying to gain weight and bulk up, and I put on about 30 pounds of good muscle by then. Well, I lost it all. I got sent home back to Jersey. I was so sick for like a year. I lost all my weight, all my muscle, went back down to like 124, 25 pounds. I had to start all over again. Fortunately, that muscle memory kicked in eventually, but... So, I go back to college. I finish my degree, and I graduate. 2003, I graduate college. And I was already in a pretty popular rock band at that time. And it was cool. We got to play a lot of local festivals with the big bands. We opened up for Incubus. Dashboard Confessional was a really cool one that we got to meet. Remember, Chris Carrabba was actually on side stage when we were playing this one song. I look over and I see Chris Carrabba, and I was like, "Holy what the?" No, see, there's one. And I look over at him, and he just goes like this, like just gave me a nod, and I was like, "Oh, it's dope." And so we play this show or whatever. And, Dashboard Confessional goes on later. And it was so cool. But, so 2003, I was already in this popular band. We were doing really well. And I graduate college, and now I go through this whole life shift. My diet shifted. I was eating 5,000 calories a day, by the way, because I was in natural bodybuilding. So I was trying to gain weight naturally by caloric intake. So my bulking level was, I had to figure it out, and I kept going up. And 5,000 calories a day was my bulking level. So I went from 5,000 calories a day to like 2,000 or 1,800 to like barely anything, like barely breakfast, some little lunch. I was going through a hard time with life. I was off and on with a girl. I was with the rock band, and we were doing well, and I was moving. I mean, all these different things that took me out of my regimented life schedule. And out of nowhere, one day I wake up just throwing up. I mean, like the worst pain in the world. And I lived alone. I was in an apartment that I had. And I had like these crazy cramps here and here and here and here. And I was just throwing up violently, like violently throwing up. Man, I threw up all day. 24 hours just throwing up until I had nothing left, until I was just dry heaving. And my insides were like just stabbing me all over the place. Well, that was the start of what ended up being organ failure. My intestines, my liver, my kidney, my stomach, I think that was it, all stopped working. Like they were all at like 10% apparently, something crazy. None of them could process anything. And I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't drink anything. Because as soon as I put it in, it came right back out. And if it wasn't coming out this end, it was coming out the other end. So nothing actually got through to be processed. And I started going to the doctors. And we lived near Princeton, New Jersey, which if you know anything about Princeton, New Jersey, it's one of the best medical areas in the country. Princeton Hospital is phenomenal. You have some of the best surgeons. You have some of the best internal medicine specialists. A year. I'm deathly ill going through this. I'm on IVs every few days at the hospital. I'm on IVs at home. I went from 183 pounds, literally 6% body fat, like almost pre-competition. I mean, I stay lean naturally, right? So that's my body type. I was in the best shape of my life, and I had worked so hard to get to that point. I lost everything. In a matter of 6 months, I was down to 120 pounds. And I'll get more into these specifically with the different episodes. But I lost everything. And I was dying. The surgeons couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. The specialists had no idea. The IVs could only do so much. And one day, my mother and I are sitting in this one surgeon's office after a colonoscopy, after many colonoscopies. And he looked at my mother like I wasn't even there in the room. And he says, "Kristen, I'm sorry, but your son only has a couple more months to live because we can't figure out what's wrong. I looked at him and I just said, you know I'm here, right? Like, I'm still here. I'm not dead. I'm here. And he was just like, I'm so sorry. We're just used to, I forget exactly what he said, but he said something like, I'm just used to having to break the news to family members. My mother starts bawling her eyes out. Just bawling. I remember going home. She dropped me off at my apartment. I just wanted to die. I was like, I'm already dying. Just take me now. And I prayed, man. I prayed my butt off. The next day was a Sunday. I didn't go to church. It was the first time in my entire life, believe it or not. 2003. Okay. And I guess it was the tail end of 2003, almost 2004, because I'd already been sick for about a year. It was a Sunday. I didn't go to church. Instead, I went to the liquor store. For the first time in my entire life, I drank. I decided to just drink as much as I could. So I didn't know anything about alcohol because I had never even tried alcohol except for like little sips when I was a kid, growing up. Little sip of wine, a little sip of beer, tiny little sips here and there when I was at my dad's. But I never drank ever in my whole life. I drank myself into an oblivion. Oh man, I felt so good. I forgot all about my problems. I was so piss drunk. Drank like a whole 6-pack, a bottle of vodka. Oh my gosh, I mean something else. I forget what else. Like it was brown, some brown liquor. But by the way, I've actually never even tasted alcohol. Alcohol hasn't even passed my lips since that day. That was the one and only time I ever drank alcohol. Because what happened afterwards was a clear sign. I drank a ton, and I woke up the next morning like I never did it. I felt fine. I felt amazing the night before while I was drinking. I was like, yeah, this is wonderful. This is why people drink. Yeah, I love this. And the next morning, I felt totally fine. No like hangover, no headaches, none of these, nothing that everybody always talked about or these problems. I wasn't throwing up, nothing. I felt totally fine. I thought, wow, I could probably end up drinking a lot all the time. I want to feel that way all the time. And I knew inside, that's why I shouldn't drink. And then over the next few days, my mouth started to hurt. I started having these sores. And then it started to swell up inside. And then my tongue started to swell up. And I started to have these sores on my tongue. And all of a sudden, within a week, my mouth was like this. I couldn't talk. I could barely move my mouth. And I had these sores inside my mouth that were wicked. I ended up getting thrush, which is essentially a severe yeast infection inside of my mouth because I had never drank, and I drank all that alcohol. It was disgusting. I mean, I was bleeding inside my mouth. Obviously, I don't have it anymore. It was wicked, and I was like, okay, there's reason number 2, never to drink again. I didn't know what happened. So I had hit rock bottom. Let's call it that. The doctors said I was dying. There was no way to cure me. I wanted to die. I was ready. But inside, I knew that I wasn't supposed to die. I had this feeling like, you're going to be okay because this isn't your time. And I got a blessing later that week. It was like a weekday. Later that week, I got a blessing from a couple people in our church. We believe in the ability to utilize spiritual powers on earth for blessings, to heal the sick. And I can attest to you that that is freaking real. Because that week when I got this blessing and these two gentlemen put their hands on my head, I felt this energy fill my whole body in a way that I've never felt ever. And this energy filled my body with assurance. It's the only way to put it, just assurance that, dude, you're going to be okay. You're supposed to get through this. And a few days later, my mother brought me a book by Dr. Jordan Rubin called Patient Heal Thyself. If anybody out there has anything like IBS or Crohn's disease, get this book immediately. Patient Heal Thyself by Jordan Rubin. He started a company called Garden of Life. My mother brings me this book and she says, I found this. Please read it right away. I read that book that day. I didn't even put it down. I read the whole book, cover to cover. And there was a diet in there called the Maker's Diet. I started that diet immediately. Immediately, I called my mom. I said, okay, Mom, this is the grocery list. This is what I need. And all we knew, my mother had raised me organically growing up. And she taught me yoga and meditation to deal with all the bullshit that I was dealing with. Sorry, there we go. And so she and I kind of talked about this, and we realized we've been putting all of our faith into doctors instead of handling this ourselves, instead of trying to figure out what's going on inside. And I said, okay, this is what I feel. I feel that there's something going on here, like food comes in and I feel like this pain right here. And it's just rejecting it. And it's like, no, don't go through here, don't go through here. And I kind of almost felt like this inflammation in this area. Like I always had like this, like, I don't know, pouch or whatever, this like inflammation. And so I went on this diet, the Maker's Diet. I'm telling you, within a month, I think it was like a month, I was able to eat. I was finally, after a year of not even being able to eat things, drink things, and I couldn't keep anything in. I was on IVs all the time. I was able to eat and drink and keep it in. Now granted, okay, the diet is not very fun. I could only have like goat dairy, raw sprouted grain bread with raw organic honey and organic butternut squash, like blended. That was about it. That was about all I could have. But I could have a little bit every day. And my body started to keep it and absorb it. And I started to get better. Day by day, by day, by day. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I can keep food in. I'm slowly putting a little bit of weight back on. It took another year. But within that year, I regained my health. And I got better. And I do believe that the day I got that blessing was the day that my body and my mind were on the same page. Okay? Mind-body connection is real. If you can work out all the other crap and get rid of it and focus on that mind-body connection, you can do amazing things. And I started to. And I started to get better. And now, 16 years later, I'm healthy. And I haven't had any problems for 15 years. So that was another time I almost died. Was dying. Now, since then, of course, I've had some other accidents, some small things, but 2.5 years ago now, 2.5 years ago from today, I was doing a job with my tree company. And we finished the job, and I had an old dump truck with a big mason body, big, huge steel mason body. And it opens down, and then you dump the bed, right? And then it goes, all the stuff comes out. I finished the job with my helper, who had become a good friend of mine, and we went to the dump site, which was at my house. I had this nice little brush dump with a hill, and you stop at the bottom of the hill, and there was a little slope here, and you stand down here, and the dump could dump it, and it went down into a little pile, and then I'd slowly cover it with dirt and just kept moving the pile out further to be ground. And it worked really well. So we finished it when I was backing the truck up. I backed the truck up to the dump, and he and I get out, and he and I are both on each side of the tailgate. And it's a big steel tailgate, and this truck I didn't really use a whole lot. It was an old truck. It was a 69 Chevy. I love classics. And I had never used the dump body in this way. I had never actually folded the tailgate down this way. We had only pivoted it as a chute to let stone out. So we pivoted, always kept the top pins in, and the bottom would swing open like this to let stone out while you dumped it. I had never opened it this way. We start to open it a little bit, He's on one side, I'm on the other. We have our hands up at the top of it like this. He takes out his upper pin because we're going to leave the bottoms in so the tailgate will hinge. He takes his pin out, walks away to go dump the bed. I'm holding the tailgate. I have the weight of the tailgate. I pull my pin out. And as soon as I let go of that tailgate, the whole thing, because remember, I'm down a hill, okay? So the truck is up here. I'm at the bottom of the hill standing down here, okay? So the tailgate is up here. I'm reaching up. So the tailgate would essentially come down at my face level. As soon as I pull my pin out and I start to move to the side to let the tailgate down, the whole tailgate slides out of the lower pins and is free. It's just flying free. The tailgate smashed me in the head, clean cut. I took all the weight because the whole thing slid out and smashed me right there in the head. All I remember is feeling the impact and then falling backwards. I fell backwards, and then apparently my buddy, my helper, came running back, and I was laying on the ground. And obviously I was just clean cut open here and bleeding out over my face. And I remember I had like my hood up, and I pulled my hood down, and I don't really remember a lot of anything else, but he said something, whatever, and I just remember reaching up, and I remember seeing like a ton of blood on my hand. But I was unconscious. While I was unconscious, I heard a voice. And I'm being real with you, okay? I know there's a ton of people that will never believe. And that's fine. That's okay. I'm not going to fault you. It's hard to believe things that we can't see or that we know. You know, it's hard to have faith, right? And for some people, that's just not something that they're ever going to believe in. But I heard a voice. And I'm not going to deny this, okay? Because that voice said to me, it's not your time. And it was very clear. And obviously that wasn't my buddy. And that voice was the same. It was the same voice that I heard years ago. And that's not something that you forget. There was this feeling of familiarity to that voice. And that's why I'll never denounce God. For me, I will always know that He is there. I'll still screw up, and I'll still make bad choices, but I know that God is there. And He said, it's not your time. And so apparently my buddy, picked me up, took me to the truck, took me to the hospital, and from the impact, I ended up with a severe TBI, traumatic brain injury, cracked my skull a little bit and bruised my brain. And every surgeon and doctor that we saw said that impact, that direct impact at that place should have killed me. Best case scenario, I would have ended up a vegetable. Here I am. It was a horrific experience for my family, but there's a reason that I survived it. Could be that I have 6 kids to take care of. I don't know. But there's a reason I've survived each of these experiences. And so here we are at this point in life. And I've been through all these experiences, and I'm trying to take something out of each and every single one of them to improve myself, to be better every day, but also to figure out what can I impart on others that will uplift, edify, strengthen, and empower anybody watching. So that's kind of my life in a nutshell. I think there's an Austin Powers quote, right? Nutshell. But listen, this is the start of this journey. Okay, this is episode 2, and I'm going to keep going. We're going to delve into so many topics. So hit like, hit subscribe, and join in for this journey. And if you recall in episode 1, if you already watched episode 1, which you should have, I'm going to be ending the episodes and saying, let go and let God. And that's kind of where I want you to join in with me. And I have to tell myself every day, Adam, let go and let God. And you're going to put whatever you believe is that higher power in place of God. Or you're going to say God. So we're going to say it together. Let go and let God. See you in the next video.